Welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
So listen, y'all, it's kind of a preaching kind of day.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a preachy kind of day. So, Egan and I have already talked about the fact that we are going to do our very best today to not just preach at you, because we definitely, it is our passion to make sure that we are providing some level of coaching support and teaching to you also. Now, the interesting thing about that, though, because in the coaching industry, there is something called an uncoachable phase. And when we get into an uncoachable phase, it means that most of the time, from a physical standpoint, it probably just means that you've worked yourself into a place of a dysregulated central nervous system, which means that it doesn't matter how much you know. It doesn't matter how strong your faith is. It doesn't matter how rational you try to be. Nothing is going to work.
Nope. Stuck.
Nothing is going to shift you.
Right.
And our last episode was called Shift Happens, right? Well, what happens if shift can't happen?
What if you get stuck in the shift?
So what we're going to talk about today are some vulnerable truths. Amy's going to share a little bit of her testimony of what's been going on for her. We're going to try to address some of these somatic experiences that occur when you go into total paralysis and what that looks like, what that feels like. And then what we're going to do is preach at you a little bit, and bring it back around to what we both love, which is the metaphorical spiritual world, because God seems to speak through metaphors and analogies and parables in order to make it applicable to our everyday lives. Right. And so we are lovingly going to say that the general theme of today's podcast is going to be your spiritual fitness and what that looks like in these times when it seems like nothing is working. Right. So I'm going to hand it over to Amy, and she's just going to open her mouth and see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
What happened today?
I feel like I'm still in recovery. Like I'm still getting my balance. So a few weeks ago, my life took a very quick turn and shift did happen. A major shift, like from the West Coast, which I've been talking a lot about. I came back to the East Coast for a visit, went back to the West and shift back to the East. And that one was a sudden one. I have been, for the past 5 years, really putting my life into God's hands and letting him shift me around a lot. And I have been in a place of learning and just really, you hate to say this, but those who've been through it understand, like the burning and the fire and the just constant, I like to say less of me, more of him. And when we ask for that, we get broken and it hurts. And we reach for things and we don't know if we're on the right track and we're desperate and it's just horrible and delicious all at one time. It's just this feeling of, like I'm where I'm supposed to be, but I don't know what I'm doing, which I don't ever know if we ever get out of that once you get on that train. So anyway, in short, I've been, my life has been aligning more and more on the path, and where I thought I actually just read my journal and I said, I wonder where life's going to take me. I at least have 6 months. And within 2 weeks, it was, without giving too much detail, it was, you're going to go to the East Coast now with no plan. So this is not something I recommend, only if God is leading you to do this. But like I said, I've been doing this journey for 5 years. So we have talked about on our last episode, it's go time. And I was all excited and pumped up. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And then I noticed God just gave me the big shove. And what I honestly felt like, Jenny, is I was pushed out of a very fast moving vehicle down a cliff. That's how it felt. And in the sense of, it wasn't painful or anything like that. It was just very jarring and discombobulating in my head. And I was trying to get back on my feet, and I'm not in a secure place. So about yesterday, it's taken me a couple weeks. I guess it's been about 3 weeks. I felt like I finally, my feet stopped. Like I got my kind of equilibrium. The earth stopped moving, and I got my equilibrium enough to stand up, and I was like, okay, I'm good. And instantly when that happened, it was like I was still feeling the after effect, and I'm still going like this. So that's just how I explain it in my terms. But basically, I felt disconnected. I felt like, my faith is solid. Like my faith is not shooketh. I am fine. I am grounded. I am anchored hardcore into my faith. So I know I'm going to be fine. I know God has a plan. I have no doubt. Like my doubt, all that stuff was burned off a long time ago. So why is it that if my faith is strong and I can rationalize, I'm big on rationalizing because just the way my brain works, I have to have everything rationalized. And God knows He made me that way. So I'm even rationalizing everything. Well, this works and that works, and it's going to be this, and I'm going to do that. And all of a sudden it was like I got stuck. That's how it felt. Like I was like, it was like everything kind of just slowed down, and I was almost in just like sludge is what it felt like. I just couldn't move. And I'm talking like in my mind, in my emotions, in my motivation. I just felt like I got a little bit stuck, and I was like, I'm sure it'll pass. But then it became very, and women don't understand this, very emotional, almost to the point of raging hormones. But I don't think it was my hormones. That crazy feeling when you're grabbing and you're like, I know I'm being crazy right now and I can't stop. Like that's how I felt yesterday. Every time we talk a lot on Marco Polo to our friends, and which is like messaging app. So I'm leaving messages and I'm deleting them because I'm like, you sound crazy right now. you need to just be quiet. And I couldn't. Like I was reaching, I was begging, I was like, somebody help me. And no matter what, I was, trying to do my word, trying to do the study I'm doing now. Didn't feel like it. Just was just slow and just couldn't connect. And I don't know, it was such a yucky, I told Jenny it was a yicky. It's icky and yucky at the same time. I just felt yicky and complaining and wham all day. So I don't know if you want to jump in there and I'll keep going, but it was well, because you had the receiving end of that.
Yeah, she called me the corner man.
Yeah. In the boxing ring, like you need to get in here and give me a pep talk because I'm losing the battle.
So as I was listening to her process, which is one of the most beautiful parts about Marco Polo, is it's a one-sided conversation, but it's not really because you're engaged with the other person, like you're in a real conversation, but you get to process through your own words.
Yeah.
And so I'm listening to her process or attempting to try to process. And as she's talking, she's like, here I am, I'm sitting here at my computer. I'm trying to get things done and my fingers won't even work. And then I'm listening to the other things that she's saying. And I'm like, her nervous system is shut down.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that, I said to her, we've got to do something somatic here because the mind has spiraled this is the part too that we have to remember that there's a lot of things happening in the back office of our brain, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things happening on that subconscious and unconscious level because that's how our bodies are designed. There's a lot of systems that have to keep running all day long.
Right.
There are billions of little signals being sent through our nerve cells.
Just like this computer right now,
Exactly. And so we can't observe, and we're not meant to observe all of that.
Thank God.
And so her coming out of this extremely stressful period where she was able over and over again to basically pray her way out of it. Right. However, we're talking cumulative stress over a significant period of time, right, which then basically takes on the definition of chronic, right? Chronic stress. And in ways that made her incredibly unsafe. And we have to think from the critter brain perspective,
Right.
what are the basic needs of a human being as far as safety is concerned?
Right.
I mean, all of that was just yanked right out from under her. And so in the background, in the back office, while she's in the front office attempting to try to maintain order, right? The back office is like a nest of rabid squirrels.
Oh yeah.
Right? There is stuff going down.
I probably could feel it because I have been sick, right? So my body's, all my filtering system, my lymph nodes, everything went a little haywire I'm like, I'm not sick, but I feel sick, but I'm not sick. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. And so, it occurred to me at that point that her brain had basically disconnected.
Yeah.
It was a point
it sounds crazy, but now it sounds like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Right. A total short circuit of the software system. Right. And this is a natural part of actually our human design. Right. If we go into a period of unprecedented stress or trauma,
yeah,
there is a functionality of the brain that actually allows us to dissociate. Right.
Yep.
And that is a protection level.
Yeah.
Right. It's like not being in full shock, but being in this mild state of shock.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. And sorry to interrupt, but I felt like when you just said that, this is exactly where I wanted to go. Like I couldn't feel it. You couldn't see it if you're around me. I looked fine. I felt fine overall. So it's, like we say, like the Facebook, like people prescribe this life on Facebook. And it's like, that's how I was operating my regular life, but it wasn't fake. Like it is the way I felt, but I didn't realize all this damage was happening. And it's not the damage that you would think of damage, but there was kind of the short circuiting was slowly happening. And you know what? We all live in this. We all do. It's that stress that you put in the back. Would you say put it in the back? What? Like your
back office.
The back office. It's like when you clean up for guests and you gotta like that last minute where you're like, oh, I forgot about, and you just throw it in there. It's like put it back. And it's that kind of stress, that the issues that maybe you're not dealing with because you can't or you don't want to. So.
And it's like you said, shoving all of the stuff that's on the countertop in the closet. Mm-hmm. And that last thing that you're about to shove in right before your guests get there and the shelves come collapsing down and everything comes spilling out of the closet.
And you're like, what the?
You're out of the closet at that point. Well, the mess is there.
It is.
Out of the closet for everyone to see now because you can't, the overwhelm of the circuitry just hit rock bottom. Yeah. Right. And so it basically is like the cerebellum, which is the little brain, which is the part of the brain that's actually plugged into the brain stem, right? That receives all of the signals for, really basic stuff like your balance and your posture and your movement and like fine motor skills, the ability to regulate emotion. There's so many things that are going on in there.
Right.
And the connection of the cerebellum to the little pons gland that then filters all of the information that your five senses is gathering about your environment and then putting that into your brain. So where you are, what's going on around you, right? Those things disconnect.
Right. So shake that up and see how you feel.
Exactly. And so now you're not in your body anymore.
Right.
Like she was having trouble with her fine motor skills. Her fingers weren't working.
Yeah. And it was that kind of like short circuiting that's just like it's giving me that little buzz, so I'm typing and like I noticed like I'm like, am I tired? Because I was trying to form words and it was like I'm talking like this and then all of a sudden like a word wouldn't come to mind. And I'm typing and all of a sudden my fingers jammed up and I couldn't get, it was like this short, it felt like a short circuiting. And I'm like, what is happening? And I didn't notice, like when you said later to me that my fingers weren't working, I was like, I said that, I didn't remember. Mm-hmm. That's how short circuiting I was. I didn't even know what was happening. I was so disconnected. But thankfully I caught it. Thankfully I have you to be like, Jenny, spiraling out. I feel it.
And part of what I do in my practice is to see how the body is acting, right? Like what is the body manifesting?
Yeah.
What are the symptoms that are going on? But not just from a full physical expression, but what is the person saying, right? She kept using the word paralysis. She kept using the word move. I can't move. Using these words that then you would go in to look at the description of these parts of the brain, and that they're literally in charge of all of those things. I feel out of balance. Cerebellum manages balance. I feel like I can't move. Cerebellum controls movement, right? Like all of these things that were an expression, she was able to express what was going on in her body, but she couldn't make that connection. Right. So it was like it's almost like an abandonment of the physical body, and you lose context of where you are.
Yeah.
So you start to spiral out because you kind of get lost in this weird, timeless void place where, like, at any moment you could recall trauma that happened 10 years ago, and now you're currently inside of it. Right. And then you snap back to the desk that you're at for 5 seconds, and then you're spiraling off into, some other thing. And then in between, whether it's a real life event or where you're sitting right now, then you have that stress activation system in the brain that's throwing out all of these scenarios at you. That is inside of whatever the trauma triggers were that caused the closet to explode open, right? So it is so noisy and so chaotic, and you're disconnected from the thing that moves you out of those things. Right. So this is where we get stuck in overwhelm and paralysis.
Yeah. And so, and just to make it, real through my testimony, Jenny did an emotion code, you call it healing or therapy session?
Well, it's like a trauma clearing. Whatever the circuits, the code.
Just brilliant.
Like you code in a computer, right? Like you're coding behind the software. Yeah. So it's looked at in a very similar way. So the emotion code and body code is a modality that deals with the circuitry of the central nervous system, and those thoughts, those emotions that get stuck because they can't go through a full circuit process. So they get jammed up somewhere, and then how very specific parts of the body will then somatically respond to those blocks.
Right. So Jenny, among a whole bunch of great information she gave me, one was it was what she called an allergy being activated, which I immediately loved the word. Like, I got it, but I wonder if like other people would understand that.
So basically what that category is called is idea allergies, right? So, and you can actually have physical allergies that become a physical manifestation of the idea allergy eventually. So let's say that you have become allergic to the idea of failure, right? You've become allergic to the idea of failure. Well, why would that happen? Well, because at some point in your life, you were observing that, right? It's like maybe you hadn't experienced failure yet.
Right.
But you were observing it happening around you, and you were observing the consequences of that. Yeah. And then maybe it was how your parents talked about it. Maybe they talked about other people of like, oh my God, they're, what a mess up that kid is. Yeah. And, their things together, whatever. So all of a sudden your mind observes that and is like, oh, I need to avoid that thing.
Right.
I need to avoid failure.
Right.
So that's an idea allergy. So you become allergic to the idea of coming in contact with failure.
Right.
Okay. So now your body owns that the same way it would own an allergy to gluten or own an allergy to pollen, right? There's going to be some sort of physical response that happens if you start to move into in the environment of or inside of the range of failure, or as your ego perceives failure, whatever that is.
Right.
And the closer you get to that feeling, the more you are going to have an immune response, right? And so after a while, if you're fully immersed in an environment where your brain is constantly telling the body that you are in failure, then you're going to have systems that go down because you're going to go into literal physical failure, right? Or your immune system is going to fail on you. You get sick.
Right.
Or you're going to start having allergic reactions, right? And so what does that look like for you? Do you get nasally? Do you get phlegmy? Do you get coffee? Do you get skin issues? Do you get eczema? Do you get hives? And so this is a very real thing. We can go into a place that we have an idea allergy to,
right,
and have a full physical response to it because of that mind-body connection.
Right. And what I connected with that, which I think will help some others too, that kind of know that they are performance-based, a lot of high achievers, a lot of successful people, even, stay-at-home moms that don't have a jobby job at the world, but they become this high achiever, just being a mother. Like, they're the moms that do the things for the classes and like just have to, for me, my life is very performance-based. Mine is very checklist-based. So when Jenny told me in doing my emotion code that failure was one of the things that she saw at age 11, I started connecting some things in my life and realizing this is really funny. My initial response was like, no, I don't think so, because I was so high achieving then. Like, I was like, I got 7th grade up and I was getting good grades. I was like doing this, I was doing that. And I remember through going through some of my childhood, all of these years, I realized that around 8th and 9th grade is when I started to feel failure. And so I started thinking about this and I was like, well, you know what? Still being I'm a high performance person. Everything I do 100+%. Like I'm a little crazy when I get going. And then I started just really praying about it and I meditated with it. And I was like, well, I didn't really realize the failure aspect. And I had that in the back of my head. I'm like, well, I'm so high performance. Why? Why are we so high performance? Oh, because there has to be a balance, because I'm afraid of failing. And then I have a joke that like all my friends make fun of me if they go to play a game, a card game when we were younger, drinking games and like, all that kind of stuff. I'd be like, no, I don't want to play. I never wanted to play. And everyone would always say, why? And I would joke and say, because I have to win. And I don't want you to see me as your friend turn into my competitive self, because it's ugly. Because I will literally tear you all down and everyone will be like, it's just a game, Amy. And like, I told you, you don't want to play with me. I have to win. So really, like today I was just talking to Jenny and said, or maybe more so than I have to win is the fear that I'll fail. The fear that I'll lose, that's more of it. And then when I sat with that, I was like, oh, that's why I became a high performance person. And this is a little off, but I think it's just really important to cover that this is the main thing that kind of got me to unset, other than you really doing some energy healing on me, even from afar. You can do that. But just to sit with these notions of suffering with failure and high performance and talking to God about it and releasing it and saying, you know what, I was even speaking to a friend lately about how like my confidence has always come from myself. I know God will do it, but I can, and I felt like I was taking my confidence from me, and I never felt in the shooketh place. I never felt my confidence wane like that. And within just the past 24 hours, I realized he wants my confidence in him. But now that I've kind of flushed out that failure, where we've spoken about how nothing is a failure. And I know that nothing is a failure because I preach it with my coaching, and how I love, as we talk about, like, I love to work out. I'm like hardcore when I work out. I'm like the crazy person, like I just said. I mean, I pretty much explained myself. Like, I'm in there going nuts. Like, I'm burpee queen. I'm like lifting heavy weights. And I tell people all the time, you shouldn't have fear of failure, because failure is what literally you are taught to lift to failure. It's the only way that your muscle can build. And even if you don't work out, like, this is just basic science. Like, and if you don't know what happens to muscle fibers, In order to build them and grow them, you have to tear them, and then you have to allow rest. So check out.
So high performance requires failure.
Right. So, right. So if you really want to be high performance, you can't have a fear of failure, right? And I know that in the gym. I get that. In fact, yeah, I don't know if I fully know it now that I think about it. Like, I always want to be the best even at the gym. But I will tell you, like, say it's one of my heavy days and I'm doing deadlifts. I will keep trying until I fail. And I'll go, oh, that was my max. Sometimes I don't, though. Sometimes I'll put just enough on that I think I can do, and I'll do my 1 rep max, and I'll pull it, and I'm like, yes, I won. Instead of, why don't you try 10 more pounds and then fail? Like, maybe I don't do that. I think about it. I really probably don't. I go until I can go and feel like a champion. But how much further could I have went? How much more? Because I'll tell you, I usually top out at a certain weight, and I kept going back up. And it kind of represents my life. So I just think this is the season right now, especially for the high performance people, that marrying failure with your high performance. There's nothing wrong with high performance. God made us that way. Like, I know I may let go of some things, but I'm going to continue to be a high performer. But to be able to push myself into failure, which means I've let go of my fear of it. There's that little Amy inside of me, that 11-year-old that told my brain and told my body, no, we cannot fail because we might lose love. We might lose our worth. No one's going to love us, and no one's going to think that we're a worthy person unless they tell us we're great. So now it's like, as long as you're trying and you're going for it, like the failure part, we have to relabel and redefine. Because like you just said, and I said with the muscles, like, you have to go past failure to build, to make your muscles bigger, to grow, to become stronger. So the question is, what do you do that you come up against failure and you back down? And you may look high achieving, but could you go 2 rungs higher in your business, your career, your, parenting, your being a friend, whatever you do in life? Could you get even higher? Where are you stopping before you fail, if you have fear of failure?
Well, I think that's, kind of where we're pushing into this season that's not really self-regulated anymore, is it? These aren't your goals.
No.
This is, and you said it, more of him, less of me. Right? Moving into this place where there's less of your power and might and more of God's calling and direction for your life. Yeah. So we push into a business, right? We want to start a business because it's what we like to do. We're good at it. We think we can be successful at it. So we start down this road, and if it's aligned with purpose, yes, the beginning, birthing that new business, there's a lot of work that needs to get done. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a nasty beginning. It's like, you just got to get dirty and get in there. But these are self-regulated goals, right? These are goals that you've set based on more of your humanness, right? There was an urging probably to go and start that. Mm-hmm. But what happens when you max out inside of your self-regulation on your path? And this is where God comes in and starts to take over. Mm-hmm. And this is when it hurts the most, because your soul knows that in this very moment, you're being pushed through a birth canal into something that has very little you and almost all of him. And your fear of failure around that, soul crushing, right? You want to talk about paralysis? Is when the one person that I say person, but the one being that you don't want to disappoint, it's like you've flexed the muscle of disappointing your parents. That's one level of fear, right? You've flexed the muscle of disappointing your best friend. That's another. Disappointing your partner, disappointing your kids, whatever that looks like, right? And now you've gotten to a point in your progress and in your purpose where what you are banging up against is God's calling for you.
Right. Yep.
So when we get to this place, this is where what we were talking about, our analogies and our metaphors start to come in. And Amy was already talking about, when you're literally in the gym and lifting weights, having to lift until failure and in order to build into a high performance level, right? But we were also talking about this and, talking about death and rebirth, this season that we're in right now, and using the literal metaphor of birth, right? When you are ready to deliver, any woman, or if you've been with someone who's given birth, you've observed this happen. When the labor pains begin, you don't get to push the pause button on that. That's not self-regulated.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the biggest contraction that you can experience in order to push out that new life.
Right.
Right. And there is literally nothing else that can be done. Your body can't do anything except be inside of that contraction. All of your energy is focused on the birth of this new thing that's coming out.
You're
right?
exhausted.
And so, yes, you are exhausted. There's literally nothing else that you can you are out of your body at that point. It is an out of body experience. So again, we're talking about the equipment that we have to get us through childbearing. And then you can remember the experience once it's over, but it's very hazy. It's not a memory of a trauma experience that would prevent you from having another child, right? There's something magic that comes in with our natural design that like cloaks all of that and makes us forget it, right?
Yeah.
And so when we are in this place where our self-regulation has now graduated into a place that is beyond us, and that it is less of us and more of him, that contraction is going to bring you to your knees. And we were listening to Dr. Cindy
Trim.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Trim. And she was talking about the fact that when we get into these extremely painful places, that we can mistake it for an attack.
Yeah.
Right? Like a demonic attack.
Yeah.
Or that there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with my body. There's something, we can very quickly misinterpret what's going on and cast a negative aspect onto it because of the pain part.
Yep.
Right? Because the body does not want to experience pain. And our survival, everything in our survival skills will kick up in that moment, and the animal brain takes over. So, when we were working through like having the dialogue back and forth with what she was experiencing, and now she had the emotion codes and body codes to kind of sit and like just think about for a little while, which is one of the things I love about that tool. It's not just a somatic healing mechanism. It actually allows learning and consciousness of self to happen. Right. So you kind of know what you're up against. You mm-hmm. know the backroom voices that are whispering back there. And then you have these puzzle pieces you can start moving around, right? And trying to figure out how they fit in this particular situation. And, I had said to her, like, you are in the greatest contraction of your life right now because you are being birthed. You are being birthed, and these missions are being birthed mm-hmm. that have nothing to do with you being self-regulated at this point.
Nope.
So you've lost total control.
Yes.
Of everything. All at once.
Yes. That just gave me a nasty image that I didn't want to see. Yeah. I mean, truly that I feel like, this season is and I keep saying for people who are kind of on board with this spiritual mission right now to kind of twist and turn the way things have been. I mean, through COVID, a lot of things were revealed, and we're going into this spiritual season where new leadership is being brought up. Things that haven't been done before need to be done now. And so that's a very, very confusing space to be, even if you're on the learning end, if somebody else is doing it or it's your mission. When things haven't been done before, there's nothing to grab onto. I mean, this is something new that you're creating. And even if it's just for you, like it's only one life, I'm living this life. I haven't done this before, like you said. So this everything in the past 5 years for me has culminated and got me to this point. Like I felt like I kept saying, like, I feel like I'm pregnant with this purpose. And I didn't really understand how it was being born, when it was being born. Maybe I had labor pains and Braxton Hicks and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's like full dilation and the baby is coming. And like you said, it literally is like everything else just goes black. And my life is very much like that now. And I understand, like I said, where I am in my life now, there's something so brand new that has to happen through me. I'm talking like generational curse breaking, like there's, and the people that I can affect, and not just me, but my team, you know, you're on that team, all of the people that are doing this work right now. It's a space where it's hard to ground. It's just hard to ground, and it's okay. Like you have to letting go of everything, but at the same time, bringing it all with you. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's like, let it all go. But then look back and grab those, like we said our last podcast, like, don't forget the miracles. Bring the miracles with you. Bring what you've learned with you, because God has equipped you. But everything else, you're going to have to leave. And you can take these things that make you who you are, but it's all been refined now. And this thing that you're birthing it's like, when you said that, I thought about, like, it's not of you, but it is you. It's like a baby. Like, it's their own thing. That baby's going to have nothing to do with you one day. You're still going to be its mama. It's got your DNA. It's got its family's DNA. So this purpose that we're birthing, it has our DNA in it, but it's not ours. It's God's. So it literally has left me, like, like I said in the very beginning, I feel like I've been through, like, you know, I've been hiking for, 3 months, and I just got to sit back down, and my body's still recovering. I mean, just to talk about physically what happened, I tried to walk the other day, and I haven't been working out. I literally felt like, and this isn't on purpose, like, I think God took away my means to work out. I mean, even to walk, I'm like, I'm just going to walk. And it's like snowing and raining out. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to walk. I felt like God said, you need all of your energy right now, all of it. And you said something to me today where it's like, yeah, it's because God wants your fight. All of your fight has to be put into this birthing moment right now. You can't even go work out right now, which doesn't make sense to me. Cause I'm like, but God, that's the way I do things. I get all my frustration out. Like, and he's like, not right now. Right now is the time to pull it all together and do the push. The push is happening.
Said, you were like, I mean, this was another thing she was saying over and over. It's just heavy on me now. Like, it's just this heaviness. And the word burden was coming up over and over again, which also means heavy, right?
Yeah.
Like, too heavy. All of these things that were leading up. And so that's what I mean. It was like a preachy day. When I got on Marco Polo this morning, I'm like, I have some words for you.
Yes.
And it was basically like, this is what you do. You lift heavy shit.
Yeah.
And you throw it around.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't need a gym right now. You don't need the X Factor right now. Your wad of the day is to get out there in God's little turf and pick up the rope and pull it, get the big tire and push it.
Right.
Like, this is the fitness right now.
Yeah.
That you don't need the physical manifestation of that, because on the energetic level, it's happening.
Yeah.
You're lifting heavy things right now.
Yeah.
So can you imagine if you were at the gym and you were working out with a partner? Now, this partner now becomes the back office voice.
Right.
That critical voice, the things that just wants to keep piling things on. So you're standing out there, the partner comes on, throws a big rope around your shoulders, do a couple squats. I can handle that, right? Yeah. Then they come over and put kettlebell in each hand. You can still squat and move around with those. What if this just continues to happen, right? And that person just keeps putting things on you, and at the same time is using this critical voice of like, what are you doing? Squat. you mean you can't carry this? You can't handle this? You know, so it's this constant allowing of these things to get built up because you don't even know really what's going on.
Mm-mm.
And so it finally gets to a point where you break.
Yeah.
And now it's time to start offloading the heavy stuff and throwing it across the room and, you know, throwing it across the turf. But the question is, how do we put our feet down, right? Like how do we stop that process? How do we reverse something that requires a somatic intervention? Right. And so there is actually something called somatic therapy. So there is somatic therapists, but the whole idea of somatic means of the body. Right. And so when you get into this fight or flight state that disconnects you, you have to get back into your body. There's got to be a reconnection of the nervous system and then a re-regulation of the nervous system. This is a very physical thing, right? So you can go to acupuncture. You could do water therapy. You could do a float tank. You can get massage. You can go to somatic therapy that is an actual somatic therapist. Talk therapy works into that if you have the right partner. It's basically something that is going to allow you to be back in your present moment, be back inside your body. Chiropractic work, right? Like what I did with the emotion code, the body code. But the vagus nerve is basically the connector of that whole area back there. And it's almost like you got to get jumper cables and like jump the vagus nerve, right? Like snap it back in and then send a signal up into the brain of like, you know, oh, systems go, right? Like all systems go again.
Right.
And so that's going to look different for each person, how that works. But I had said to Amy, like, I know that when she worships, she sings and she dances. And, you know, part of the stimulation of that vagus nerve, it sits behind the vocal cords back there. Yeah. So you can gargle, you can hum. That's why the mantras can be really therapeutic if you're into that. You know, those kinds of things. Yeah. It vibrates that nerve back there. And whatever frequency is being given back there is then going to jumpstart or send a signal into the brain. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I had said to her, you can hum, you can sing, you can gargle. I said, but you probably just need to worship for a couple of hours.
Yep. And it was funny because that morning I think I had said, like, I haven't worshiped in a while. I need to worship. I haven't gotten time to me, that's the thing that I can do. It just completely aligns everything. It shifts my brain. Like you said, I'm moving my body. I'm a dancer. So I'm a dancer. I'm a singer. Like I'm creative. Like I'm expressive. I'm big when I worship. I'm not one of those people that's like, let me in a church with some good music. And I'm like, let me sit in the aisle because I'm about to throw my hands up and I want to dance, you know? So that's my expressive, you know, way of reconnecting myself. It is a grounding for me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've worshiped and it's just almost right when I'm done, I'm like, I feel better. But I love that you brought the to be able to reset yourself, that is like such a cool way. I was like, gargling, huh? Like the things we learn. But just for me, especially because my throat's one of those things, you know, that's one of my areas that I trauma sits. So just the notion of gargling, getting that going again. Even doing this for me, like I'm talking, we're flowing through the spirit and, you know, just getting myself regrounded.
So, you know, I think that it's just to kind of wrap up everything that we've been talking about. You know, this is a very real and very human piece of leveling up. This is a very human event that is almost unavoidable. Yeah. You know, I think that you probably with practice and with ongoing therapeutic intervention, you know, building a really good wellness team around you, that you can train your your system become a regulated nervous system.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're not going to experience glitches or, hiccups, but certainly your recovery time will be less, right? It's like with anything else, it's training, right? But right now, if you are in this place that we're talking about, because we've been building into this season, we started to talk about this in our last episode, as far as this process of moving from, our resolution goals, starting to create some progress, building upon that, the sabotage starting to come in. What does that feel like? What does that look like? Then actually getting past that point of sabotage from a place of conscious perspective, right? And then, but all that stuff's still going on in the back office, right? That you're not totally aware of.
Right.
And so then it's like being thrown backwards so many steps and going into a complete collapse of system.
Yeah.
Right. And so we wanted to address this because it's very real.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things, when I went back to listen to our podcast from last week, I was listening to a lot of the things that we were saying, and I was like, man, we were really optimistic. We were like super optimistic in that particular podcast of like, we were very much championing the whole, process and being in warrior mode and, all of those things. But none of that matters when your nervous system shuts down. None of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I always think of like,
back in.
I think of like, it's just that moment in like, movies that, the peak comes and right before like, the thing is going to happen, the person always shuts down and like somebody's got to come give them a pep talk. Like, you can do this, or don't, keep going after him. If it's a love, some sort of love story, the end always has that break where it's like, well, and then it rises back up again. It's like, that's the part in the story. Like, that's where we are, like before that birth, before that breakthrough. That's pretty well known, at least in like, the churchy, more spiritual side of churchy. Like, they always say it's toughest before the breakthrough. It's always the darkest before the dawn. It's that notion of being like, but you gotta, keep charging forward till you hit the wall. And then you have to lay there for a second, get a pep talk. And I believe in a day or so, I'll be stronger than ever. I feel it. I feel that in me. I feel it building back up in me. I feel the pain leaving. I've had some, like you said, I had some reaction. I get reaction in my skin a lot. I had a lot, like almost to the point of infection. And I had it almost overtake me one time. When I look back now, I think I have massive failure in my life. I was dealing with failure then. But like, I can feel pain leaving. I can feel myself being more grounded. But yeah, it's like that moment that you're like, I feel like it just happens to everyone when something big is about to happen. Your body, your mind, your soul all has to align. And then you got to like plug into God, because he's the superpower. The God is like the superpower behind it. Like I always say, not by might, not by power, by your spirit, God. Because if it's by my might and my power, like I said, I might get to a certain level. I will, because that's the laws of nature. If I push hard enough, but like, I want to go way up. Like I want to go way up, and it's not for me. Like what I'm doing now is completely for God. So I don't even know what it looks like. My head is constantly flooding with, what could it be? What could it be? What could it be? Like I have a vision in mind. Some of them are very specific. I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but I know in launching myself in the way that I'm doing now, it's going to be fast. It's going to be quick. I think by the end of this year, there's going to be so much in motion. So of course, and then I think about it from a spiritual realm, where there are forces put in place to keep you from your destiny. So that's a part of all of this, is you throw that one in the mix too, where it's like, there is a force that says, I don't want you succeeding. Your whole family hasn't succeeded in this, Amy. Like, you don't get to do it. But God told me I'm going to be the one. Yeah, but look at your past. Look what you've been doing. He's never did it for you before. That's the Gethsemane garden moment with the devil. Who's like, and all of that, throw that in the mix with the back office and the body reacting. And it is literally, it's like, it's a shortage where you like, it's like throwing water on an electronic device, and it's a zzz. Now I'm going to get weird and be like, and then you just got to sit in some rice. Wait, but isn't rice like rest? Rest, something, compression, elevation. I could go deep into that, but I won't. We said we weren't going to preach that much.
That's definitely a fitness thing for sure that I know nothing about.
Yes.
But what the kind of elevation that you're talking about, that's the hero's journey. And you can't experience the hero's journey without a massive fall.
Yeah.
And we can label that failure, a lack of perfection, but who wants to be perfect? That doesn't make a good storyline.
That's gross.
That doesn't create an underdog. It's so not interesting.
Exactly.
Don't you want to be interesting?
I do.
It's like that beautiful mosaic that was made from all your broken parts, like the idea that, if we are perfect, we are so uninteresting, and that's not the story we want to write for ourselves. Right. We want that moment in our movie storyline where we collapse on the floor and the people that love us most come and retrieve us and pick us up and throw us back into the battle. And then we're like, that's the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And that, this is a required part of that cycle.
Yeah.
And so, we've said a couple of times in some of our various podcasts that this year feels a little bit more special.
Yeah.
And that this is a year of what's considered the Jubilee year, from a biblical perspective, which is also a year of unprecedented favor. Mm-hmm. And in that Jubilee year, there's 10 times the blessings, but there's a lot of hard work that's required. So that work that you put in is then reciprocated times 10. Right. And so it's, this little like glitch or blip that we're in right now, that's all it is. And remembering that this is a temporary place that you are in, that go out and get your wellness team together, right? Find your corner man, somebody that's going to at least get you back up on your feet and over to triage if that's what you need.
Right.
Right. Because at this point, if you truly are in shutdown, then there needs to be an intervention and some sort of somatic intervention. So some therapeutic, bridge to get you back in. So, there's no shame in that. We talked a little bit about that too. This is not a year to hide your scars. This is not a year to hide your wounds. This is not a year to hide anymore. No. And so, this is definitely a good time. And we'll talk about that. We could do an entire podcast on that.
I wanted to mention too that in the very start of our podcast, we talked about the new year not being January 1st, it being March. And while we're recording this, we are in the beginning of March. So I think about what I've been going through over the past days leading into March. It's like, that's because it's the new year, it's starting. And so that had to be the darkness before the dawn. Because now the sun is rising now in this new year on the cyclical calendar. And it's go time now. We said that last time. It's go time. And it's that moment had to happen though. It has to happen.
So go back to our podcast if you haven't listened to it, episode 4, and check out the journal prompts that are partnered with that particular podcast. If you go down into the description of the episode, you'll see some journal prompts there. Or if you come over to our Facebook group, we're going to be posting them there in document form. Yeah. But it'll take you through some conversation with yourself about what is it that's going on with you right now as far as what's dying off. What do you want to bring with you? How do you feel like it's time for you to go right now? There are some discussion points there that potentially will help coach you through this process. But like I said, if you are in an uncoachable place, then potentially that somatic therapy is a good place for you to be. Yeah, exactly. Because you can deal with your body first, get those two things connected, and make some space in the mind to start getting some clarity around these things. Yeah. So have grace for yourself, have some compassion for these human moments, because that humanness can get very heavy at times. So any other remarks?
I just wanted to thank you for being my corner man.
Any day, every day.
Pull me up and out. I just think being conscious of these things and being aware that Not everything is darkness. Not everything is the attack from the devil, and not everything is even bad. Like it's when you are plugged in with God, and you know when something's off. If you're living like this every day and taking a step every day in faith and doing these, like I always say, the toolbox, you're pulling from your toolbox, you're getting your journal, and you're feeling close to God. When you feel disconnected, it's very real, and you need help. So that's that. Just be aware of it. Know it's not going to last forever, and that you can crawl out of it. And these are the moments that it's probably right before your breakthrough. We'll be reporting next time. We'll see what happens.
Yes. We are in real time right now. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody again for tuning in. If these messages resonate with you, please subscribe, like, and comment on our video. Please share with family and friends. Come find us on social media. And as always, just thanks for taking the time out to listen.
Right.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.